Good afternoon, scholars. Happy Friday. We've made it almost to the weekend, and you guys deserve uh, some rest and a break this week because of how hard you've worked this weekend. So we got one more day. Let's give it the excellent focus and effort that you have been demonstrating this week. I'm so proud of you guys. We stayed at 79%, which I am really happy with. I'm really glad that we got a lot of scholars joining us who are kind of late getting started, but I'm glad you're here. Um, Caleb is one that comes to mind, but I know there's others. So appreciate it, guys. Keep it up. Let's check our work from yesterday. Yesterday we were tracking the different dangers that face sled dogs. You were asked one question. We're going to take a look at Serenities here. The first question you were asked was about Buck's approach towards Spitz, and basically Buck left Spitz alone. Buck hates Spitz, but he left him alone as much as he could because he knows if he gets in a fight, it's gonna be do or die, right? Spitz, on the other hand, is like a huge bully and jerk to Buck, and is always trying to get this fight going, right? And we know that it changes. I think Imani answered this question really well towards the end here. One day, Buck is exhausted. He gets up to go get his fish for the day. He comes back to his sleeping spot, and Spitz has tried to steal it. And in that moment, like Imani says right here, she said Spitz took it too far, which made Buck really frustrated. And Buck at this point couldn't control his anger, so he jumps Spitz. Then, so he finally Buck snaps, and the fight starts. Right, but it didn't go to the death. Why? Because we know that the super scary pack of starving huskies showed up and kind of changed everything. Right. So the assignment yesterday, and it's going to be the same task today, is we were reading, and whenever we found an example of a danger, if you look at the example here, a danger that faces buck and sled dogs in general, we track it. We name the danger, we provide a piece of evidence that shows what we're talking about, and then my push yesterday was that teaching analysis is teaching. Really bring it home, explain what you're pointing out here and why it matters. Serene did a really good job in her analysis. It was really informative. It was enlightening. It's teaching, right? She says one of the dangers is weather, frostbite, the snow, the wind. Her quote was, I use this quote too, Imani. Oh, my bad. We're looking at Imani's. Looking at the quote she used was driving snow, a wind that cut like a white hot knife, and darkness had forced them to grope for a camping place. So why does that matter? She says weather is a danger because the dogs can get frostbitten, and mainly for Buck because he's always been a house dog. He's never been in the snow. Great connection to earlier in the story. What I wanted to show, I wanted to look at Amani's and Monica's because they did a really good job of the danger. They kept it broad because the prompt asks you to name dangers that face buck or sled dogs in general, right? So they kept it broad. They zoomed out. They said weather is a danger, the snow, the darkness. Getting injured is a danger. There's starving animals, there's hunger, right? They kept it big and zoomed out for the danger, and then they got specific when they gave examples and um, when they dove into their analysis, right? Here's a common misconception. A lot of people got too specific in their danger. You got too specific to just this one story and this one instance This prompt is asking you to name dangers in general that sled dogs face. So in general, a danger is hunger. What's your proof? Monica names the huskies, the marauders, the thieves, right? In her analysis, she gets specific. The huskies ate all the dog's supplies, so they have no more food. So just like the hungries, they can become hungry and turn against each other. Do you see what Monica did? She got specific in the analysis, but in naming the danger, she zoomed out and she was general. That's what I was looking for. Serenity is an example of someone whose analysis was really informative and really specific, but a little bit too specific on the danger, right? And that was very, very common. So my feedback for the day, and I know I keep changing things on you as we figure it out, but I want to call this feedback of the day because a lot of people were getting confused between, I'm using the word focus a lot. So I always tell you, like, keep this in mind while we read. Yesterday I said, keep in mind, we're looking for dangers. So a lot of people in the focus box wrote, look for dangers. But then what my feedback of the day was, which I was calling focus, was that analysis equals teaching. So let me make this hopefully less confusing. This is my feedback for the day. This is what gets written in your box. My feedback for the day is to zoom out first. As you look for these dangers that face sled dogs in general, make it zoom out and don't be so specific in your, that's kind of like your claim, your assertion. Get specific in your analysis. Okay. I'll show what I'm talking about. Let's start today's lesson together like we did yesterday, as we look for dangers that face buck faces and just sled dogs in general face. We're picking up at the bottom of page, I think this is page 26 in the PDF. It's page 19 if you are reading the book, and I have the minutes written down in the assignment instructions if you're also listening to the audiobook. I realized today that the audiobook is a little bit, there's a couple words here and there that are different. It's not going to throw you off, but I think this book is more the exact words as they were written. I noticed that the narrator in the audiobook, he doesn't do the French Canadian accent, and they even changed the words a little bit. So like an example on page 21, Perrault says, one devil that spits. But in the audiobook, the guy says like, that spits sure is a devil. So it's a little bit different, but it's not going to throw off your comprehension. All right, so we picked up Buck and the dogs had just gotten away from the Huskies. Buck, that was risky for Buck because Spitz, twice during their fighting with the Huskies, Spitz still was trying to attack Buck and kill Buck. Once he full on bit him, and then another, he tried to knock Buck over so that the Huskies would kill Buck. So Spitz is not letting up. So we're picking right as Buck and the other dog ran off into the frozen lake away from the Huskies. Here we go. Let's pick up at later, and we are looking for dangers. Later, the nine team dogs gathered together and sought shelter in the forest. Though unpursued, they were in a sorry plight. There was not one who was not wounded in 4 or 5 places, while some were wounded grievously. Dub was badly injured in a hind leg. Dolly, the last husky added to the team at Daya, had a badly torn throat. Joe had lost an eye, while Billy, the good-natured, with an ear chewed and rent to ribbons, cried and whimpered throughout the night. At daybreak, they limped warily back to camp to find the marauders gone and the 2 men in bad tempers. Fully half their grub supply was gone. The Huskies had chewed through the sled lashings and canvas coverings. In fact, nothing, no matter how remotely eatable, had escaped them. They had eaten a pair of Perot's moose hide moccasins, chunks of it, chunks out of the leather traces, and even 2 feet of lash from the end of Francois's whip. He broke from a mournful contemplation of it to look over his wounded dogs. "Ah, my friends," he said softly, "maybe it make you mad dog, those many bites. Maybe all mad dogs, sacre dame! What you think, eh, bro?" All right, I think we have a few dangers that we've named, right? Um, I think the most obvious one is food again. If you find another danger that you used from last time, that's fine. You'll just have new evidence and maybe a different take on it in your analysis. So I do actually, I'll start even before that. I'm worried as I read this section of how badly injured some of these dogs are because they're in the middle of nowhere. And we know that they don't have a lot of supplies. So if you get really hurt while you're out there in the wild, um, it might be way more serious because you're so far from medical care and supplies that you would need to recover, right? Because it's basically like, you're out in the middle of nowhere. So one of the dangers that I'm thinking about that's in my mind is isolation or distance from civilization. My evidence, I don't know if I'm going to have one killer quote that shows how far out they are. So I might just have to kind of paraphrase. Um, I might just have to paraphrase my evidence here, guys, which you can do. Evidence doesn't just mean a quote, it means facts from the story or evidence. If a quote's the best way to show it, you can do it. Sometimes if a quote's not the best way to show it, like in this case, there's not one solid quote that shows the distance, I can paraphrase. His team in the Alaskan wilderness are from this city. You know how far they are from civilization, guys, because Perot, he's basically a mailman, right? This is what he's delivering is the mail, and this is how difficult it is to get the packages and the correspondence and the letters from one place to another. So now's my analysis. I'm going to depart from what we know and what's happening in the story and show you my thinking. Injury in the wilderness is more serious than an injury in civilization. In a town or city, broken bone can be mended and dog can rest and heal. In the wild, there are few supplies, little food, and no time to rest. Right? So there's my analysis. Okay. So I hope I just demonstrated a little bit of creative thinking outside the box. And what I also want to demonstrate was my feedback for the day, which was zoom out first. My zoom out was isolation or distance from civilization. I didn't get too specific towards Buck yet. I do that more in my analysis. Okay. I hope that's clear. I hope that's helpful. And I hope you guys enjoy these pages and have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.